sometimes I'll like start searching for words or something to talk about or something to share. And like it always like as soon as I start thinking like, oh, I have nothing to share or say, then it's like that's all that I have to share or say. And like sometimes that sensitivity to like being relaxed or being tense just kind of like, I don't know, grabs you, tightens you a little bit. And definitely been feeling a bit of that this morning. Just like, I don't know, trying to relax, but like you can't really do that, I guess. Uh,
Yeah, I guess that kind of yeah, I guess yeah, trying to relax. It's interesting. Yeah. Is it even possible to force relaxation kind of? It's yeah. But yeah, just on the whole nothing to share thing, I've because I've been thinking about doing another of the Levi with Levi, right? So and I have had so many experiences lately, and it's like, but it's like it's almost like I have nothing to share because it's just happening, sort of. It's just I feel like what am I gonna talk about? Like it's I can't really put my words on it here now, I feel, but there's something, it's like, well, what is there to discuss, sort of? It's like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not really getting this across, but there's this feeling that, yeah, it's just, I mean, of course, it's happening a lot, but it's just, yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna
yeah,
stop talking.
no, I actually resonate with that for sure because it's like there are times I'll go through my day and like not even remember what I did an hour ago. And then it almost feels like because I've seen talking and speaking and expressing myself as like a should, what I should be doing throughout my life. Like if I'm being quiet, I should talk more, that there's always been almost like a got to be a reason instead of just letting it happen. Like I got to have something to share. But I'll notice when I'm, you know, out and about, like at the bar, like sometimes people will just come up to you and just start telling you a story out of nowhere. And like the thought of doing that for me, I'm like, I don't know if I would jump to that, but that's just as appropriate as anything else. Like I would have such a meticulous sort of thought process before making
Mm,
a jump into just like telling someone a random story about, myself out of nowhere. But I hear that sometimes, like, I'm just like, oh yeah, that's available too. Like that's a possibility because I hear someone say that and I'm not like that caught off guard. I just like listen and pay attention to what they're saying and then maybe ask a question, respond, share something else in response. Because I guess that's kind of it when there is a lull, when there isn't anything to say or anything going on. Like everyone's kind of in the same boat. Like everyone's just in uncertainty and just like making that first jump into saying something or sharing something. Like I guess there doesn't have to be a reason, like you're saying with your examples of going through things throughout the day. Like I feel like I'll be paying attention, but then yeah, very similarly, like the thought of why share it, I guess.
yeah,
And on the flip side, it's like why not? I guess
yeah.
it's something to do, some way to possibly connect with someone
Mm,
else by sharing stories. But yeah, I've never really taken up storytelling or even like, telling jokes or having, I don't know, sometimes I wonder, it's like, is there not even faith in myself enough to like tell a story? I don't know. And that's just like digging really into myself. So anyway, I resonate with that feeling like what is like why even do it?
yeah, yeah. Well, I resonate a lot with kind of your resonance out there, and it's like I feel like it's almost like because it's quite like you start to see often like kind of, especially in myself, like the reason I'm telling a certain thing. For example, let's say I've had a great fucking week. Like, for example, it's like it feels like why should I like tell people about that, right? It's like I feel like it's almost easier if I'm going through something to like, oh yeah, that'll put me in like a bad light, and then it's okay to share it, you know. But it's like I don't know, there's something there. I think maybe I'm over analyzing like what's coming out of me a little bit. Um, but I've been noticing when I sit down, for example, to do well this conversation or whatever, right? That things are just coming, and it has nothing to do with one or the other. It's sort of just it's in there, and whatever is on the surface is coming out, right? So yeah, but I think I am also I'm unsure if I've ever went up to someone and started to tell them a story about myself, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it's like I guess you got to be kind of relaxed to do that, or just I guess there's not like necessarily a reason in one way or another. It's not like it's just sort of a sensitivity, I guess, like not a right or a wrong. But I was at the bar the other day talking to a couple people, and one of them was pretty talkative and was just saying like, "Oh, I gab on all the time." And I'm like, "I really don't mind." Like a lot of times, I assume that I'm being too quiet, and she was like, "Yeah, but people love that. You know, people love when someone's willing to listen and just hear what people are saying." And it hit me that like as much as I've leaned towards, oh, I feel like my insecurity stems from being quieter or like not sharing as much, like someone who shares a lot could be on the same sort of spectrum of being doing it out of insecurity or out of need or out of like a sense of lack and feeling like they have to instead of restricting themselves, they like overshare. So there isn't really one way or the other. Like obviously there's not like a correct, I guess. And everyone's going to be different, but I guess it's just looking at the reasons why you don't share as much, and yeah, like looking at those and just where the sort of judgment comes from. Like it, yeah, it doesn't, you start letting go of that, and then it makes more sense to share when you're being honest and authentic and whatnot.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that makes sense, I guess. It's I remember actually the on the like on exactly what you're saying there. I was at this silent retreat for like 10 days, and this one of the ladies there said exactly this. She was like she really felt like it was her job to kind of keep the conversation going, you know, and like be the life of the group or whatever. And it was kind of faced with like 10 days of silence, kind of just show that to her, sort of how nice she thought it was to be silent and just chill, kind of, you know what I mean? But I think it's like it's probably a balance for everyone. I'm sure everyone is kind of in one way or another kind of trying to compensate for something, I guess, some sort of a lack, and just finding a balance where it's not important if you're talking a lot or being silent, I guess. Uh, yeah.
Yeah, like there isn't, but to someone who is on one side, like the other side's going to seem like, oh, my life would be so much better if that was the case. And it's like, okay, well, what would be better about it exactly? Like what would change, say, if you were on the side of the spectrum that's more skews toward like having to talk all the time or like wanting to share all the time? That doesn't necessarily guarantee, like something else one way or the other. Like I'm kind of thinking about like why does it seem one side or the other better to the person, just like assuming something about yourself, because it's like if it's about your experience and your relaxation and then interacting with people, then one way or the other, like it kind of comes back to you know, and how you're just like kind of cool with what you're doing moment to moment. Like all
Yeah.
that whole thought of something more than that or outside of that, like doesn't ever guarantee anything one way or the other. And so
Mm.
it seems a lot more futile without any guarantee.
Yeah. No, I was actually this like weekend that I had with like a lot of new people and like people I already knew and like I kind of because I've been more and more comfortable kind of just chilling by myself, right? And just being okay with not like saying something all the time or stuff like that because that's yeah I that's been like a thing like but it's like it's I find it quite comfortable but I still all the thoughts are kind of still there going like oh my god what about this and like afterwards oh, well you haven't been doing that enough and you haven't talked enough with one-on-one and you know it's like all these thoughts and it's like but it's exactly what you're saying. Like, but how am I doing? Like, I was enjoying myself so much. You know what I mean? So I was just like kind of experiencing and it kind of you know I was enjoying myself. And it's like then it's like what then what does it matter? Like and it, the only reason that it's almost like for me it's like it's almost like I'm thinking that other people want me to do something different, right? So I'm kind of sitting there putting assumptions on everyone instead of just focusing on kind of my experience, which will affect their experience, and their experience will affect my experience, and it's just yeah, it is very interesting these things. Yeah.
And that point about like how many assumptions you have to make that someone's like wants you to act differently, like even just how much attention you can put on that, like assuming that someone else is even spending time thinking about you know, spending time thinking about how you should be acting or noticing exactly what you're doing all the time and like assuming you should be different. And like there's no way to know that, but your brain can be so quick to like jump to that conclusion that, oh, all these people are definitely thinking this exact thing. And therefore I have to do this or not do this or blah, 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 blah. And it's all this like outside of myself sort of talk, you know, and like kind of, I guess it's just passing of responsibility, you know, for choices, for doing things like, oh, well, this might happen or this person, this or that. And it's just like, if it's all question marks, then it's just coming from myself, all those assumptions, obviously. You know, so
Yeah. I wonder like how much of my fatigue from this weekend is from just not being okay with exactly what I was, if you know what I mean. Or maybe I did try a little bit more than I wanted to in some situation, and just how much that kind of had drained me, you know, and just and it's kind of especially like with people who I kind of caught myself several times also like kind of they're kind of holding back like a little bit of me just because once again I'm putting assumptions on other people and what I think they want me to be or how I should be or how I was. It's kind of like yeah, it's oh man, there's a whole process going on. Just yeah, it's it is interesting. Mm.
yeah, like just being cool with yourself. Like,
Mm.
I think there is the side of like self honesty where you are more and more sensitive to like, you know, yourself and what you're doing and how you're acting and where your focus is. That I don't know, becomes kind of unavoidable, but like can also sort of be presumptive, assumptive. Like if you're trying to jump to certain conclusions about yourself, it's like there can be a lot of assumptions there that distract you from just like what's actually happening in the world in reality, instead of some sort of assumption that then it's like, oh, well, this means that this might lead to this, or this means that I shouldn't do this or should do that. Like maybe it's kind of all very basic. Like it's all life is, there's so much going on, but like it's not any of the additional stuff,
Mm.
in our head, but it can feel like that sense that there is a little bit more, like, I don't know, yes and no, I guess, because thought is a component of the experience. And yeah, sorry, I'm just like kind of talking through this sort of thing slowly. But yeah, yeah.
So I think it's like it's an interesting point, right? Because for example, with the whole holding myself back thing, for example, that's clearly just an assumption, and I don't even know why I'm doing it, right? And then I'm doing it, and maybe that's the perfect thing to do. And maybe it's even the perfect thing to do to watch it happen. And if you think about kind of like, I know there's been some conversation throughout the podcast and stuff like about kind of bridging the conversation kind of with and maybe that like that it makes sense to kind of like bridge things sometimes sort of and I the truth is I don't know why I'm doing anything, right? And I'm just making up all these stories about it. And yeah, and just to add quickly on that is it's like being in this situation where it's kind of like it's a lot of it's like it's kind of it was a lot of fun, but it's also kind of draining, right? And it was like, who's to say it's wrong to be in a draining situation from time to time, right? And just get drunk one evening and really feel the consequences the next day and just be hungover together. And that whole thing, it's like, yeah, I'm feeling it a little bit, but it's not wrong. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? So it's like it's all these kind of assumption that it shouldn't be like this because now I'm kind of feeling a little bit drained. But it's like, does that even fucking matter? Like I can still feel great while being drained. I just have to relax a little bit and not like go for another party tonight. You know what I mean? So yeah, just there just came a bunch of thoughts out there
Oh
on.
yeah, yeah, because it is kind of like just everything's reality, and then you make choices and there's ripples from it, but like it's not black and white, with the drinking especially, that gets demonized, or like having a night out, like, oh, it's bad, as if it's bad for the whole world, instead of it just being like, I'm going to drink a little bit more, have a good time, have a headache in the morning, and move on with my life. Like it's not this massive like situation in the world that, to the point that someone else would tell someone else like, oh, you shouldn't be doing that. It's so obvious that like that person's just looking for their own validation for their choices not to do that. But yeah,
Mm,
like there isn't, it's just you make your own choices and you deal with the consequences and the ripples that come from that, and then you make more choices and deal with the ripples, but like the ripples go everywhere all the time. And so it's, yeah, and then it's just like more of a, obviously more of a sensitivity thing, but yeah, it's like if you're living your life, in a certain way, it's it's okay, and just like continuing to, I don't know. I guess it's how focused are you on yourself, and then there's going to be consequences to that one way or the other. Sometimes, like more focused on yourself, it's like there's going to be more tension. Less focus on yourself, there's going to be more ability to relax and, where your choices come from when you're looking at that. Um, it kind of just like dictates your own experience. Yes. Like we're always kind of choosing our experience in some way, like how much we're making things about ourselves. And then, yeah, reaping the consequences.
Yeah. It's also like the more it's kind of, yeah, if I'm it's kind of like, yeah, I feel like kind of committing to like avoiding a certain part of my life, sort of. It's kind of like it's also very like self uh focused. Like, you could of course say that it's self-focused to kind of go get hammered and have a bunch of fun, but it's also like not doing it because I want to feel fantastic all the time. It's like that's also self-focused. So it's like, what's happening? Like, what do you feel like? I feel like, yeah, I don't know. But it's there's something there about like just letting things happen as they happen, sort of. And I feel the more I think it's wrong what I'm doing, like the worse it'll get. I guess whether you're uh in any situation, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, just that sense of like like that assumption that you should be doing something else other than what you're doing, like in the moment. That doesn't necessarily help anything. Like that's where the tension usually comes from. It's like I should be acting a different way. I should be something else. I should, be in a different spot, be in a different situation, and but you're not. Like you're never anything else anywhere else doing any other thing, but you do have the opportunity to shift, I guess where the focus is in the stuff that you're doing too. And, kind of looking past yourself, um, helps with everything, not focusing so much on yourself because it doesn't really like help your experience at all either. There's very little fullness to your experiences when you're wrapped up in yourself and focused on yourself. And yeah, it's wild just how much we can do that. I've definitely noticed just like in different situations in my life how much I've kind of been focused on myself like fully. And I guess, everyone kind of does it in different ways, but sometimes it can just feel like, yeah, like you really fucked things up. And then I'm like, well, you can change now, I guess. But
Just have a neighbor doing the lawn close to window.
oh yeah.
Oh, it's better. I'm not sure if you, but it's
Couldn't hear. No, the sound is still coming in pretty good. But sorry, man. I've been kind of out of sorts on this call. Not gonna lie. I've been kind of tense for some reason. Had a yeah, weird night and then interesting morning. Um, but yeah, I think just sorting through a couple things and choices and whatnot. Um, but yeah, it's like I guess you kind of feel like I'm kind of feeling, I don't know, like consequences of my actions, and then I'm like, maybe that's just the story I'm telling myself too. But I don't know. It gets hard to tell sometimes. But I guess it's always some sort of story
yeah.
that you're doing.
Well, I appreciate you being here anyway. So it's yeah. I yeah, it sounds intense. What you're yeah uh, what you mentioned earlier. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's probably just mountain out of a molehill sort of thing, as I do. But yeah, I know it's like sometimes I feel like I can't talk about anything but myself, and then it's like that's all. That's what I'm doing right now, as I'm saying that. So you can't
Mm.
really like escape talking about that.
Yeah. What else is there? Kind of. It's like, yeah, I could talk about others, but that would, yeah. But it's like
that's
it's
very
it's assumptions whether I'm talking about others or me or whatever. So it's yeah. Hmm.
that's kind of a good point, actually. I guess speaking one way or the other, if you're talking about someone other than yourself, then and it's like you're just kind of probably being a dick. I guess maybe it's more actions, like actions not so self-involved, and then it's like you talk how you talk, I guess. But again,
Yeah.
like you said, the overanalyzation, it's like, yeah, that's been there for a while. And I think, yeah, sometimes it's just like lack of attention in my life that leads to these sorts of things. But um,
Yeah.
yeah,
I it's really like strong sensation like when I was at this burn thing, where I was kind of like I just kind of felt that yeah, it was just like the focus was so strongly kind of on what was happening that I felt like what was coming out of me was kind of just coming out, you know. It's like, yeah, it was like, yeah, it was like my focus was very strongly on, yeah, I guess I'm just saying the same thing one more time now, but on what was happening, that what I contributed was kind of like just what it was, you know. It's like, so there is something there about, yeah, I guess it's just whether you're focusing on the thoughts or on what's happening. I guess that's what it always comes down to, you know.
yeah, and then it sometimes it can feel like, oh, letting go, oh, being relaxed, like, oh, I'm focused on reality instead of the thoughts, and that sense of like not having control of the
Mm,
thoughts. Like it felt almost safer to be choosing the thoughts and the words instead of like, I don't know, like being out of your head, like you were saying, having an intense attention paid to, reality, to the point that there wasn't so much weight on speaking, like
mm,
on saying something. It wasn't like I should be saying more or less, just like
mm,
I don't like in the flow, I guess. And I feel that sometimes too in conversations. Um, and I guess it's just looking past yourself.
mm,
Um, which I was talking to someone close to me recently, kind of about how, you know, I've spent a lot of time talking about like looking past yourself, and like kind of the experience of being more relaxed and not being as focused on yourself is kind of like, I don't know, not an uncommon experience. And I was kind of thinking of it as like a super unique experience that only someone who's like looking past themselves experiences, but it's just anytime you're not thinking about yourself.
mm,
And I was like, oh shit. I'm just kind of thinking about myself like all the time, like a lot, if I'm not out of my head in the world, like in moments, conversations, like holy shit. Um, yeah. And so they're like, you make these videos about this, but it doesn't seem like you're doing it very much. Like, it seems like you're kind of not looking past ideas of yourself or what you should be. And I was like, yeah, maybe you're kind of right. Maybe you're right. And so yeah, I don't mean to put that on in here, but I guess it is just kind of a basic, moment to moment sort of like, yeah, where are you paying attention? Is it attention to how you're doing and assumptions, or to, yeah, like to everything else that's happening, like everything else going on
Mm,
in the world,
yeah,
which is way more interesting.
it is. But it's strange. Like sometimes I feel like I almost want to kind of dive into the thoughts. It's almost comforting at some level, even though I know how much better my experience is when I'm not doing it. So yeah, I don't know. It's a bit strange, but I do feel like more and more uh, there's more and more like a pull in the direction of here, like compared to before. Uh, it's like I want to kind of be, I want to experience what's actually happening. And it's not that I didn't want it before, but I didn't, I guess I didn't know what was happening, sort of. Because of course I did experience those moments. I guess I've experienced that my whole life, just at uh, in different situations.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's like didn't know what you were missing almost. I get that too, that like you spend so much time kind of focused on your thoughts in your head, thinking about how you're doing, that then when you're not as much, it's like it feels like a jump to like quote unquote let go,
mm,
but it's not, it's just a different experience. It's just like where the attention's being paid, because then you get more sensitivity and then there's not as much fear of like not being able to think about what you're saying. Because it's like you kind of are still, but it's like you're aware of what's happening out here instead of aware of what you're thinking so much, but it's still the same degree of expression.
mm,
It just feels like, yeah, I guess if you're trying to wear a mask and be in control, then there's going to be a lot more incentive to think about what you say, think about what you share before you just share it and express
yeah,
it.
it requires like some faith in yourself, sort of like to dare to kind of let yourself loose
Yeah.
on
Hmm.
the world. Yeah,
Yeah, big
yeah.
time. And I've kind of thought of that as like, yeah, I've definitely turned, I say that as if I absolutely know, like that whole, oh my gosh, the whole like recognition or realization of just like being what is, being God, like into an egotistical perspective, like, oh, being relaxed, not like in reality, and seeing past myself. It's like a super unique experience. And it's like, it's not really as much. I guess there's certain focuses if someone's really focused on themselves that dictates actions in a certain way, but like the experience of being relaxed and just like, yeah, attentive to the world is available all the time.
Mm,
And I'm
yeah,
like, Jesus Christ, like everyone, most people are doing that to some degree. And again, like I'll get fixated sometimes on like what other people are doing and how their experience is. And it's like, bring it back to yourself. But
yeah. But like it's like if I'm looking at my own experience, and for sure I've had like I just feel like life is opening up, so much more when you're not holding on to this, and I actually thought about that this morning, like how how scary it is to kind of, or it's not really, but how scary I like a lot of the things that I'm doing now, like a couple of years ago, there's just no way that it's like, it's not that I wouldn't want to do it then, but there's just no way I was willing to let people see such like those changes in me, sort of. So it's almost like I feel like I was just thinking like that. I was almost the reason I'm holding on to me or like my identity, or at least used to do it more and still do for sure. Like, yeah, but there's it was like for other people, sort of. You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, yeah. I'm not sure where exactly that fit in here, but it's there was something there that triggered this chain of thought. But
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, the prioritization of like other people, and it's like prioritizing what other people think, not even like other people, period, too, because it's like, well, I'm gonna act a certain way to control their assumptions about me. But it's that's all like cerebral shit too, instead of not, yeah, just kind of letting yourself go and act how you act, and then like just being involved in things, like doing things for other people just because it's like, why not? You know, when there, if there's not anything I'm trying to do to fix myself necessarily, and just like I can show up as I am somewhere, then like you don't have to do things that focus on yourself so much, or like focus on improving yourself one way or the other. And I think maybe that's a different sort of feeling that I feel now, is that sense of feeling good because I feel like I'm doing, you know, the right thing according to the world isn't there so much, but it's like right thing in myself, you know, like my own choices, because it can feel good to feel like, you know, you're on the correct path, but it's not really that same like internal good feeling. And most of the things that you do on that right path are like pretty self-involved for the most part, you know, but it's about, you know, at least for me, it was about like building myself and improving myself instead of not focusing on that so much and being able to actually live.
mm, yeah, it's true. But it's also interesting, like, because I've been thinking a bit about, like, also like kind of the selfish nature of me, sort of, you know, and it's like how before, like my I was, I feel like my I it's like what it's sitting a little bit in to even say it, but it's like it's still sort of the selfishness that is driving me. It's just I've just changed like my priorities, right? So it's kind of like I see more how like my like I don't know. It's like what I'm trying to say is that I was always driven by doing the best thing for myself, sort of. And I think that's still true because but it's just that I see that the best thing for me is to be more myself and also to be nicer to others, to notice others. I'm seeing how my judgment on others are reflecting directly back on me. So it's like, oh, of course I'll stop doing that. You know, do you know like it's almost like it's the same to some degree motivation. It's just I just have changed what that means to me, sort of. Uh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I totally get that. Like it's not being as selfish like for myself and my own experience, or not being as selfish for yourself and your own experience, because like being less selfish impacts your own experience. So it's
Hmm.
still, it's just, yeah, it's more, I guess, when that's more about the reality of your experience than how you think about yourself. Because then it's like the accomplishments, achievements, like those don't actually help you in the moment, but they help if you think about yourself.
Mm.
Whereas being less selfish actually informs your own experience. You can relax a little bit more, not be as guarded, not be as, focused on trying to be something, because it's just like you're acting authentically and, being out there involved with people. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense, that it's still selfish, but
Mm.
it's, yeah, with different focuses, different priorities.
Yeah.
Because you can be selfish and be super tense
Mm.
too.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's the other side
I
of
don't
it.
know. I don't know, like I think the reason I found it kind of interesting is just because I don't know. It's just it's this specialness, right? That it's easy to kind of get caught up in a little bit. That it is like, oh, I'm on this path and now I'm feeling free and it's so special. It's like, but it's like it there's a part of me that just feels like I'm exactly the same person, you know. But I'm just, but also I feels like incredibly different. So it's just like there's this paradox there where it's like it's just yeah, and it's almost like the less I just feel more like me, I guess. So it's almost like the less I feel, or the less I hold on, I guess, to me, the more I become me somehow. Like, and that's pretty cool, I think.
Mhm.
But now I feel I'm going all over the place here now. But yeah, I guess that's what's coming out at the moment. So.
Yeah, I feel it because, yeah, it's like the me that I'm thinking about, like, isn't me. Like, I'm thinking about something that's not trying to hold on to something, that's not trying to express something in a way that's not to, like, more maintain that idea than like what I actually am in that space. You get a little more space in your mind too when it's not completely full of yourself, like full of what you're doing, how you're doing. All the thoughts can be circling that maintenance, that preservation of yourself, instead of being able to take in more considerations, kind of like use your mind in a sense, because like the alternative is you can't, or you don't, or you can still, but it's, yeah, it can be less, I don't know, it's like less accessible almost when it's about you, or when
Yeah.
you're thinking about yourself. It's like those are where the thoughts are, versus not thinking about yourself. It's like the thoughts are in potentially about everything else, like exploring the world. But it does, when you relax, it does feel a lot more like very much still being yourself.
Hmm.
Just
Maybe, maybe
like a
that's like what
deeper.
feels so similar is sort of all the thoughts about Levi, you know. It's still quite similar. It's like it's not like they have changed so much. I still think the same things about myself while kind of not paying that so much attention to that, just feels more like me, you know, because that is me or whatever I am, you know. So yeah.
Yeah, it's like all of that with less judgment, kind of like less self judgment. Like that'll definitely be a shift. That's been a shift for me, is like, yeah, it does feel kind of similar. It's just less judgment, less assumption that like I should be doing something different. Like I'm cool with what I'm doing, how I'm living, how I'm acting. And so
Mm.
yeah, I can then relax there
Yeah.
a little bit. But yeah, I think. think that's a good spot to wrap
Yeah.
this one up. I know
For
I was a little slow on this one, but no,
sure.
this is a great great chat, man. And I always, yeah, appreciate the mental stretching and the yoga. Yeah, always great chatting with you.
Likewise. Appreciate you joining me for these sessions. It's yeah, it's fun to keep the yoga a little bit sharp,
Yeah,
and yeah, I'm feeling more and more relaxed with it actually, like compared to the first call we did. So
it feels like it for sure. So that's
yeah,
that's awesome. And yeah, I guess it just comes with reps, getting the practice in.
yeah, yeah,
But yeah, and it's always appreciated. Whatever, even if we do one exercise the whole time, like I'm I'm here for the ride. So,
sounds good. Yeah.
all right. Well, have a good rest of your night, Levi, and always appreciate it. And I'll talk to you soon, man.
All right, see you, man.